The ruin stood silent under a bleeding moon, its pale light cutting through the shattered arches of a forgotten palace. The air smelled of damp stone and old magic, the kind that clung to the bones of the world and refused to die. And there, in the heart of the crumbling throne room, she waited. Seraphina. Her name had been whispered in fear once, a hint of power and terror. Now it was dust on the wind. She sat upon the obsidian throne, her body held in cruel stillness by chains of silver and spellwork. Her skin was like carved ivory, her lips dark as a poisoned rose. But her eyes, those were alive, burning. A vampire queen bound in eternal punishment, forced to watch the centuries rot around her. Then he came. The werewolf moved like a storm-given flesh, all coiled muscle and untamed fury. His name was Kale, though he had not spoken it in years. Names were for creatures that belonged to something, and he belonged to nothing but the hunt. His golden eyes glowed in the dark, scanning the ruins with animal wariness. He had followed the scent of old blood, of power buried deep, and now he found her. Their eyes met. The world stilled. Kale's hackles rose, his claws unsheathing without thought. A vampire, his kind's oldest enemy. Yet she did not snarl, did not lunge. She simply watched him, her gaze ablaze against his skin. Something in him recoiled, and then burned. She was beautiful, but not in the way of soft things. Hers was the beauty of a dagger poised at the throat, of a wolf's fang before the kill. He stepped closer. The chains around her wrists hummed with ancient magic, their rooms pulsing like a slow, hateful heartbeat. She tilted her head, studying him as if he were a riddle she longed to solve. "Come to finish what your ancestors began, beast." Her voice was a whisper, yet it filled the chamber like a struck bell. He did not answer. Words were human things, and right now he was all wolf. His nostrils flared. Her scent was intoxicating, cold jasmine and something darker, something that made his blood roar. He should have torn her throat out, should have ended the threat before it could rise. But the moment his fingers brushed the cursed chains, the throne cracked. A sound like breaking bones filled the air. The runes shattered. Seraphina gasped as the chains fell away, her body trembling with the first free breath she had taken in centuries. For a heartbeat, she was still, then she moved. Faster than thought, she was upon him, her fingers curled like talons, her fangs bared. Kale did not flinch. He met her fury with his own, his growl vibrating through the stone beneath them. Her nails dug into his chest, drawing blood, but he only pulled her closer, his grip unbreakable. She stilled. His breath was hot against her cold skin. His eyes burned into hers, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Desire. The air between them was alive with it, a tension like lightning before the strike. She could kill him. He could kill her. And yet, neither moved. Somewhere in the ruins, a night bird cried. The sound snapped the spell between them. Seraphina stepped back, her chest rising in a breath she did not need. Kale's lips curled, not in a snarl, but in something darker, something hungry. The game had begun, and neither of them knew the rules. The night breathed around them, heavy with the scent of old rain and wet earth. Kale stood at the edge of the ruins, his body tense, his senses sharp. He could still taste her, cold and sweet, like winter wine. It should have repelled him. Instead, it coiled in his gut, a need he couldn't name. Seraphina watched him from the shadows, her form barely more than a whisper of darkness. She had fed for the first time in centuries, draining the life from a wandering traveler who had stumbled too close. The blood had revived her, but it was not enough. Not when the werewolf's presence set her nerves alight. "Why did you free me?" Her voice was a blade wrapped in silk. Kale didn't turn. His ears twitched at the sound, but his gaze remained fixed on the distant trees. "Didn't." She laughed, low and dangerous. "You touched the chains. You broke them." He bared his teeth. Instinct. A lie. Or maybe not. He didn't know why he'd done it. Only that when he saw her, proud, trapped, burning with quiet fury, something in him had snarled mine. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of something else. Wolves. Not his kind, but close enough. His pack, or what was left of them. They had caught his trail. Seraphina's nostrils flared. She smelled them too. "Your kin come to kill you." Let them try. His voice was a growl, deep enough to shake the ground. She stepped closer, her movements liquid, effortless. You are not afraid. He turned then, meeting her gaze. His eyes glowed like embers in the dark. You think I fear anything? The challenge hung between them. For a moment, neither moved. Then the first howl cut through the night. Cale's body tensed, his muscles coiling. He could fight. He could run. But something in him wanted her to see, to know what he was, what he could do. Serafina tilted her head, considering. Show me. He didn't hesitate. The shift tore through him like wildfire, bones cracking, fur erupting from skin. Where a man had stood, now there was only the beast, massive, monstrous, his muzzle streaked with scars. He threw back his head and roared, the sound shaking the trees. The answering howls faltered. Serafina did not flinch. Instead, she smiled. Then the wolves came. 5 of them, lean and savage, their teeth bared. They circled, hackles raised, but Cale did not back down. He lunged, his claws ripping through the first before the creature could react. Blood sprayed the leaves, hot and thick. The others attacked as one, but he was faster, stronger, a storm of teeth and fury. Serafina watched, her pulse, long dead, thrumming in her veins. She had seen battles before, wars that had lasted decades. But this was different. This was raw, primal, beautiful. When it was over, the clearing was silent. Cale stood amidst the bodies, his chest heaving, his muzzle dripping red. He turned to her, his golden eyes blazing. She stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the damp earth. You are not like them. He huffed, the sound almost a laugh. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above his bloody fur. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then slowly, he pressed his forehead against her palm. The touch burned. She curled her fingers, her nails scraping lightly against his skin. What now, beast? He shifted back, his body reforming into something almost human. His breath was ragged, his skin streaked with dirt and blood, but his eyes never left hers. Hunt. She understood. Not just for blood, not just for survival, for the thrill of it. Together, the moon watched as they vanished into the trees, 2 shadows merging into one. The forest swallowed them whole. Branches clawed at the night sky, their twisted fingers blotting out the stars. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, of things that lived and died in the dark. Cale moved through it like a ghost, his steps silent, his body a shadow among shadows. But Serafina, she was the darkness itself. She glided beside him, her pale skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her dress, tattered from centuries of neglect, whispered against her legs like a lover's touch. She didn't need to breathe, but she did anyway, just to taste the wildness of him on her tongue. Where are we going? Her voice was a blade wrapped in velvet. Cale didn't answer. He didn't need to. The pull between them was a living thing, taut as a bowstring. He could feel her eyes on him, sharp as knives, and it made his blood burn. A rustle in the underbrush. Both of them stilled. A deer, young and foolish, stepped into the clearing. Its eyes were wide, its flanks trembling. It hadn't seen them yet, hadn't smelled them. Cale's muscles coiled, his claws twitched. Serafina's lips curved. Hungry? He didn't move, didn't blink, but something in his gaze shifted, a challenge. She understood. In a blur of motion, she was gone. The deer startled, its head jerking up, but it was too late. Serafina struck like lightning, her fingers closing around his throat. There was no struggle, no sound, just the quick, merciless snap of bone. She held the creature's limp body aloft, her fangs glinting in the dim light. Then slowly she offered it to him. Cale's nostrils flared. The scent of fresh blood was thick in the air, rich and warm, but it wasn't the deer he wanted. He stepped closer. Serafina didn't retreat. Her chin lifted, her eyes daring him to take what he wanted. For a heartbeat, they stood like that, 2 predators caught in a dance as old as time. Then Cale reached out, his claws slicing through the deer's flesh with ease. Blood welled, dark and gleaming. He brought his fingers to his mouth, never breaking her gaze as he licked them clean. Her breath hitched, a tiny, almost imperceptible sound, but he heard it. The corner of his mouth twitched. Then the wind changed. A new scent, old magic, rotting flesh, something unnatural. Kale's growl ripped through the silence. Seraphina's head snapped toward the trees, her body tensing. Shadows moved where they shouldn't, shapes too twisted to be human. Malric's creations. The first one lunged. Kale met it midair, his claws tearing through sinew and bone. Black blood sprayed, sizzling where it hit the ground. Seraphina moved like death itself, her fingers like steel as she ripped through the creatures with terrifying grace. But there were too many. One of them caught her arm, its teeth sinking deep. She hissed, her eyes flashing crimson. Before she could react, Kel was there, his jaws closing around the creature's skull. It crunched like dry wood in his grip. Back to back, they fought. Her cold precision, his raw fury, a perfect, deadly balance. When the last creature fell, the forest was silent again. Kale turned to her, his chest heaving. Her arm was bleeding, the dark ichor of the creature mingling with her own black blood. Without thinking, he grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but careful. She stiffened. No one touched her, not like this. He brought her arm to his face, his tongue dragging over the wound. The taste of her was electric, dark honey and winter frost. It burned down his throat, settled low in his gut. Seraphina's fingers twitched. Her nails dug into his shoulder, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind him she was not prey. He didn't care. When he released her, the wound was already closing. Her skin was flawless once more, pale as moonlight. She stared at him, her eyes unreadable. Why? Kale bared his teeth in something that wasn't quite a smile. Mine. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Seraphina exhaled, slow and deliberate. Then she stepped closer until their breaths mingled in the cold air. Prove it. The challenge was there, bright and sharp. Kale's growl was his answer. The hunt was far from over. The ruins rose before them like broken teeth against the sky. This was no place for the living. Crumbling stone, air thick with the weight of centuries. But they were not living, not truly. Seraphina traced a finger along the fractured archway, her touch stirring dust that hadn't been disturbed in ages. This had been hers once, a kingdom, a nightmare. Now it was just bones. Kale prowled behind her, his footsteps silent, but his presence louder than thunder. She didn't need to look to know his eyes were on her, gold and burning, always burning. She could feel his gaze like a brand against her skin. Why here? His voice was rough, unused to questions. She smiled without turning. You freed me. Now see what you've unleashed. The great hall was a carcass of what it had been. Shattered throne, tattered banners clinging to the walls like ghosts. But the air hummed. Power slept here, her power. She stepped toward the dais, her dress whispering against the cracked marble. The moment her foot touched the first step, the torches flared to life. Blue fire, cold and hungry. Kale's growl vibrated through the chamber. Seraphina didn't stop. She ascended like a queen returning to her scaffold, each step measured, deliberate. When she reached the throne, she turned, letting the eerie light carve her into something more than flesh, something eternal. Well, beast, she spread her arms. Do you regret it yet? He moved. One moment at the base of the dais, the next, right in front of her, close enough that his breath warmed her lips. His hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her throat, not squeezing, just holding. A claim, a challenge. She went utterly still. His thumb brushed the frantic pulse beneath her jaw, the only betrayal of her body's response. His nostrils flared, drinking in the scent of her, the way her pupils swallowed the violet of her eyes. No regret, he rumbled. The words curled low in her belly. She lifted her chin, baring more of her throat in silent defiance. His grip tightened, just enough to make her breath catch. Outside, the wind howled through the ruins. Inside, the fire burned colder. His other hand came up, claws skimming down her arm until their fingers tangled. Her nails were just as sharp as his, just as deadly. This changes nothing, she whispered. He bared his teeth. changes everything. Then he yanked her forward, and the throne shattered behind her. Stone exploded, the blast of magic ripping through the hall like a storm. Seraphina gasped as the power hit her, ancient and familiar, the remnants of her own curse breaking at last. The chains that had bound her for centuries, not just the physical ones, but the ones carved into her bones, snapped. Cale held her through it, his body a shield against the debris, his grip unbreakable even as the world tore itself apart around them. When the dust settled, she was shaking, not from fear, from fury, from freedom. She looked up at him, her lips parted, her fangs gleaming. Why? His forehead pressed against hers. Told you, mine. The word wasn't gentle, it was a growl, a vow, a truth sharper than any blade. Seraphina's fingers dug into his arms, drawing blood. He didn't flinch. Somewhere in the ruins, something howled. Not a wolf, not a man, but something in between, something hungry. Cale's head snapped up, his body tensing. Seraphina smiled. Let them come, she murmured, her lips brushing his jaw. Let them see what happens to things that try to take what's yours. His answering snarl shook the very foundations of the dead kingdom. The hunt was on. The night smelled of iron and storm-wet earth. The ruins lay behind them now, swallowed by the hungry forest. But the past was not so easily left behind. Seraphina walked like liquid shadow, her bare feet leaving no mark on the damp leaves. The wind carried whispers, voices of the dead, of the forgotten. They called to her. She ignored them. Cale moved ahead, his broad shoulders cutting through the underbrush like a blade. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He could feel her presence like a weight between his shoulder blades, cold and sharp and impossible to shake. She watched the way his muscles shifted beneath his skin, the way the moonlight clung to him like a lover. He was beautiful in the way wild things were beautiful, untamed, unbroken. It made her teeth ache. You're staring. His voice was rough, barely more than a growl. She smiled, slow and knowing. You're interesting to look at. He stopped, turned. His eyes burned in the dark, gold and feral. Interesting. She stepped closer, close enough to see the pulse hammering in his throat. Should I lie? His hand shot out, fingers tangling in her hair, not pulling, just holding. A silent warning, a silent dare. Her breath hitched. Then the forest screamed. It wasn't a sound any living thing could make. It was the shriek of rusted metal, the groan of rotting wood. The trees themselves seemed to twist away as something lurched from the shadows. Marek's hound. It was a mockery of life. Stitched flesh, too many eyes, too many teeth. Its breath reeked of grave dirt and spoiled magic. Cale shoved Seraphina behind him, his body already twisting, bones snapping as the beast tore free of his skin. Fur erupted, claws lengthened, and then there was only the wolf, massive, monstrous, his snarl shaking the earth. The hound lunged. They collided in a storm of teeth and fury, black blood spraying the leaves. Seraphina didn't move, didn't blink. She watched as Cale ripped into the creature, his claws shredding its unnatural flesh. But the hound wasn't alone. Shadows peeled away from the trees, taking shape. More of Marek's abominations, their bodies stitched together from nightmares. Seraphina's lips curled. Then she moved. One moment she was still, the next she was a blur of pale skin and dark rage. Her fingers found throats, her nails tore through sinew. She fought like death itself, graceful, merciless. Back to back, she and Cale carved through the horde, her cold precision, his raw savagery, a dance as old as time. When the last creature fell, the forest was silent. Cale shifted back, his human form slick with blood and sweat. His chest heaved, his breath ragged. But his eyes were alive with something dark and hungry. Seraphina stepped toward him, her own skin streaked with black ichor. She reached out, her fingers hovering over the gash on his shoulder. He caught her wrist. For a heartbeat, they stood like that, her cold skin against his burning grip, the air between them thick with something neither could name. Then she twisted free, her nails digging into his chest, not deep enough to wound, just enough to sting. His growl vibrated through her bones. She smiled, slow and wicked. Mine. The word was a challenge, I promise. Kale's fingers tangled in her hair again, yanking her head back, baring her throat. His breath was hot against her skin. Say it again. She laughed, the sound like shattering glass. Make me. His teeth grazed her pulse. The forest held its breath. Then, a twig snapped. Both of them went still. The hunt wasn't over. Not yet. Ashes drifted through the dead city like black snow. Serafina walked through the ruins of her old kingdom, her fingers trailing along broken pillars where her banners once hung. The air tasted of smoke and old blood, of memory. Kale stopped beside her, his gaze cutting through the gloom. He didn't speak, didn't ask, but she could feel the question in the way his shoulder brushed hers, rough, deliberate. She stopped at the skeleton of a great hall, its roof long collapsed. They burned it, she murmured, the night they bound me. His nostrils flared, catching the phantom scent of ancient fire. Why? She turned to him, her eyes glinting like shards of ice. Because some things are too beautiful to live. A growl rumbled in his chest, his claws flexed. She could see the fury in him, not for her past, but for the ones who dared touch what was his, hers. The realization should have chilled her. It didn't. A sound echoed through the ruins, not wind, not beast. Footsteps, deliberate, mocking. Malric stepped from the shadows, his smile a gash of rotting teeth. My queen, he crooned. You've brought your pet. Kale moved before Serafina could stop him. One moment he was beside her, the next his claws were at Malric's throat, pinning the sorcerer against the blackened stone. Say that again, he snarled. Malric laughed, black blood bubbling on his lips. Oh, she hasn't told you. His gaze slid to Serafina. How you were always meant to break her chains. How your bloodline was bred for it. Kale's grip tightened. Or, Malric gasped, how she's been using you from the start. Serafina went very still. Kale didn't look at her, didn't need to. She could feel the weight of the silence like a knife between her ribs. Malric grinned. Ask her, beast. Ask why she really let you touch her. The air turned to glass. Then Serafina was there, her hand closing over Kale's wrist, not pulling him away, just holding. Enough, she said, soft as a grave's whisper. Kale's muscles locked. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then he tore Malric's throat out. Black blood sprayed. The sorcerer choked, his body crumpling like rotten cloth. But his laughter lingered, slithering through the ruins even as his corpse hit the ground. Kale turned to Serafina, his chest heaving, his claws tripping. She met his gaze without flinching. Truth, she said, is a weapon. He knew that. Kale's jaw clenched. Is it true? The wind moaned through the hollowed-out city. Somewhere, a stone cracked and fell. Serafina stepped closer, close enough that her breath ghosted over his lips. Does it matter? His hand shot out, fingers tangling in her hair, forcing her head back. His eyes burned. Answer me. She bared her fangs. Yes and no. His grip tightened. I knew what you were, she whispered. I didn't know what you'd become. The words hung between them, sharp as a guillotine's edge. Kale exhaled, slow and ragged. Then he yanked her forward, his mouth crashing against hers. Not a kiss, but a claiming. Teeth and fury and something too raw to name. She bit back just as hard. When they broke apart, both were bleeding. Kale pressed his forehead to hers, his breath hot against her skin. Mine, he growled. Serafina smiled, her fingers curling against his chest. Prove it. Somewhere in the ruins, Malric's corpse began to laugh again. The night wasn't over yet. The earth trembled beneath their feet. Malric's laughter coiled through the ruins like poison, his corpse twitching as shadows poured from its mouth. The air thickened, choking with the stench of rotting magic. Around them, the dead city groaned, walls cracking, stones shifting as something ancient and hungry pulled itself from the dark. Serafina's fingers curled into fists. He's not dead. Kale bared his teeth, his body already tensing for the shift. Never it is. The ground split. Moans erupted from the soil. Skeletal hands, ribcages, hollow-eyed skulls fused together into something monstrous. Malric's final trick. his masterpiece. The creature towered over them, its body a patchwork of stolen corpses, its maw gaping wide enough to swallow the moon. When it screamed, the sound shattered what remained of the windows. Cale didn't hesitate. He shifted in mid-leap, his bones snapping, his fur erupting like wildfire. The wolf that hit the creature was twice the size of any natural beast, all muscle and fury and teeth. They crashed into a pillar, stone exploding around them. Serafina moved like lightning. Her nails lengthened into talons, her pupils swallowing the violet of her eyes until only crimson remained. She lunged, carving through the creature's limbs, black blood spraying where she struck. But the bones nipped back together faster than she could tear them apart. Cale's snarl cut through the chaos. He had the thing's throat in his jaws, his claws raking its belly, but it wouldn't die, couldn't die. Malric's voice slithered from its mouth. "You can't kill death, my queen." Serafina froze. Then she smiled. "No," she agreed, "but I can starve it." Her hand shot out, fingers plunging into the creature's chest. It howled, thrashing, but she held on, her nails scraping through rot and marrow until she found what she sought. The heart, not the creature's, hers. The shriveled, blackened thing pulsed in her grip, still connected to her by threads of ancient magic. Malric had kept it all these centuries, the last tether of her curse. The creature wailed. Cale understood. His jaws clamped down on the creature's arm, ripping it clean off. Serafina didn't flinch as black blood drenched her. She just tightened her grip, her fangs bared in a vicious grin. "Let go," she hissed, "to the heart, to the curse, to the past." Then she crushed it. The explosion threw them both back. The creature came apart like rotten cloth, bones scattering like hail. The ruins shook, walls collapsing, the very air screaming as Malric's magic unraveled. Cale hit the ground hard, his body shifting back to human form mid-fall. He rolled, coughing blood, his vision swimming. Serafina lay a few feet away, her chest still, her skin paler than moonlight. For the first time in 500 years, she looked fragile. Cale crawled to her. His hands shook as he gathered her up, her body limp in his arms. "Look at me," he growled. Her lashes fluttered. He snarled, shaking her. "Look at me." Her eyes opened, faint, flickering, but there, always there. She lifted a trembling hand, her fingers brushing his jaw. "Still. Here," she whispered. His grip tightened, his forehead pressed against hers. "Mine," he rasped. The ruins groaned around them, the last of Malric's curse crumbling to dust. Somewhere, a nightbird sang. Dawn was coming. Dawn boiled across the sky, staining the ruins gold and crimson. The air smelled of wet earth and crushed stone, of endings and beginnings. Serafina stood at the edge of the shattered throne room, her fingers trailing along the broken obsidian. The chains that had bound her were dust now, the curse that had hollowed her, gone. And yet, she turned. Cale leaned against a crumbling pillar, his arms crossed, his body a map of fresh scars. The sunrise painted him in firelight, gilding the sweat on his skin, the blood still drying on his chest. He watched her with those wolf's eyes, gold and unblinking. Neither spoke. The wind carried the scent of him to her, wilderness and iron, something hot and alive beneath it. It made her throat ache. She tilted her head, staying. His lips curled, just enough to show the sharp edge of a canine. Asking, she smiled, slow and knowing. "Never." He pushed off the pillar, his movements lazy, predatory. The distance between them vanished with each step, his shadow swallowing hers. When he stopped, they were close enough to share breath, close enough to bite. His fingers brushed her wrist, tracing the pulse there. "What now, vampire?" She didn't pull away. "What do you want?" His grip tightened, his thumb pressed against the delicate bones of her hand. Not enough to break, just enough to remind her he could. You know. She did. The throne room lay in ruins around them, the remnants of her old kingdom, her old life. But the hunger in his gaze wasn't for stones or crowns. It was for her. She stepped back, just enough to make him follow. Then take it. His growl shook the ground. One moment they were standing, the next she was pressed against the broken throne, his body affirmous against hers. His teeth grazed her throat, not biting, not yet, just tasting. She arched into him, her nails scoring down his back. "Mine," she breathed. He laughed, the sound dark and rough. "Prove it." She did. Her fangs sank into the shoulder, his blood flooding her mouth, hot and rich and alive. His roar shook the ruins, his hands gripping her hips hard enough to bruise. But he didn't pull away. When she lifted her head, his eyes were molten. He licked the blood from her lips, slow and deliberate. Then he yanked her forward, his mouth crashing against hers, not gentle, not sweet, but fierce and claiming and perfect. The last of the throne shattered behind them. Neither noticed. Somewhere beyond the ruins, the world kept turning. Somewhere, enemies gathered, new threats took shape. But here now, there was only